Today, what we're going to do is I went on a hike the other day, mainly fitness, wanted to try to get back in to shape a little bit. But as I'm walking, I'm starting to think. I'm world building. I am encounter building. And during that hike, I was able to develop a couple of the characters that you will be seeing here in School of Magical Arts. So I'm not going to get too much into that because I don't want to give away too much to the players that may watch this, may join us here on Twitch or YouTube. All the socials are down below in both the links and on the video stream as well. So there's like a clarity. I don't know if anyone else feels that. As you go out and you go hiking, you see beautiful things, you see amazing things. You're also out in nature. So I took a few pictures on my hike. I do enjoy taking a few pictures, but part of this was, as I saw something that I thought, hey, I could talk about this in a future video, which I was probably planning a little bit further down the line, but due to finding out yesterday that Dave wouldn't be able to join us, why not get into it? So nearby where I live, there is this dormant, or I guess not dormant, it's extinct. An extinct volcano is the technical geological term, as it has not erupted within recorded history time. But there's plenty enough evidence, obviously, that this was indeed a volcanic eruption site. It's a nice little area near a lake. Beautiful, not far away from everything. Pretty easy to get to. And I figured for the first hike in a long time, I would start here. So for starters, as I'm walking through, it's fairly early in the morning, 10-ish, 9:30-ish. There's very few people out there. It was a Monday morning, so very few people, a few runners back and forth, but I could think a lot. And I started thinking, what here can I use in a game? What here can inspire me to up my game in both my descriptive abilities, in adding to the world that my players are in providing more options for them to explore their own imagination. So that was first, like what around me can inspire me. What here can give me thoughts. My next part was, as I'm walking, and especially there's some very monotonous trudging times. You're just going back and forth on some trails, making your way up to the top of this volcano, which, honestly, it's not a huge elevation change. It's, a couple hundred feet, maybe. It was a thought as I'm walking around, and I start thinking, okay, who are they going to encounter in this next game? What are they going to sound like? What's going to be their aspirations? Why would they help them? Why would they hinder them? How would they go about helping them? And I started working on some voices and stuff because I do like to do a few voices while I do it. So the nice thing is I'm out in the middle of nowhere. No one's around. So when I notice that there's no one close enough, I can start talking with weird accents or whatever I feel like. All sorts of weird things. And I can play through conversations that I could see the players having with the NPCs. I gotta give a shout out because actually while on this hike, about 3/4 of the way up, I saw that Barker was live streaming and was giving some inspiration, giving some things that he thought about as he was hiking. So I was hiking, watching him while he was hiking around his neighborhoods and talking about and giving homework. So if you are a member or if you're not a member of the Absolute Tabletop official group, I would say if you're into D&D and you want a good brain trust that can help you, they're great over there. There had been a while where it seemed like the inspiration flow from that group had kind of dwindled. And I think it's like any group. There's ebb and flow, growth of that and fade away of that. But recently, a lot of the guys, they've ended some of their other projects. Some of them are starting new career options. Some of that has freed up some time to put back into the group. So it is good to see. In fact, right now, Matt Click is doing a stream on Facebook. So there probably won't be a ton of those people here watching live. But I got to give a shout out to them because they're a great brain trust. They're always fun to listen to. They put out great games. And all in all, if you're ever stuck in something like what can I do with my players? What can I do with this situation? Or where's an inspiration? You can either ask them or just jump on. And there's probably someone posting something that could just grab your mind and send it in new twists and turns. But back to the hike itself. What we did here is I was walking this solo, and I got to this point, which is like a little like spot where they kind of talk. They have a little plaque that talks about the volcano, what you're seeing here. But it just kind of made me think, okay, if I had players, if I had a group of adventurers traveling from one point to another, or they're trying to find out information, what would this be? What would I give them here? Or what thoughts could they have? And part of it I thought about was, from here, you can see, this mountain, this hill, and not much else around, because it obviously blocks vision. So if you're out there in the wild, you probably are trying to get more information, trying to find out. So you'd probably hike up the hill or whatever to try to find that. Another thought I had is this being a volcano. I came across these volcanic rocks here, and if you can tell, there are striations here, these kind of flow marks. This is where like a lava flow had kind of slowed down, and here it kind of built up on top of itself. I also took a lot of geology classes in college, so I'm not going to get too much into that. But this kind of looks like what they'd call like a Pahoehoe style flow, where it just kind of slowly creeps forward at this point, and then will solidify once it cools off. But adding in these things like, okay, they're by a volcano. What style of rocks are they seeing? What is more evidence that it's a volcano? And how could you maybe tell them it's a volcano without telling them it's a volcano? What hints could you maybe give them? Things like this, little things like the rock, like the exploded crater on the first picture there, are easy enough ways to kind of say, hey, you're looking at a volcano. I got to this point here on this walk, and they're not necessarily in sequence, but I got to this point here on the walk, and there's the top of that cliff, it's the top of the hill, and you can't see much further. I'm about 20 feet from the top when I took this picture, and my thought was, what's on the other side? What could I see from there? Because at this point I've walked up. If I turned around and looked, I could see pretty far out in the direction I had already come from. But if you're adventurers, right, you've gone that way. Maybe you're climbing to get a view back to see if there's a villain following you or whatever. And we'll get to that more in a minute. But I looked at this top of this hill and I said, what could I think of? What's on the other side? Could there be monsters waiting and prowl? They've already seen the adventurers coming, and here they're waiting and they're silent and they're gonna ambush. This would be a great surprise area. You get to the top of the hill, and as you crest that top of the hill, out comes these monsters that saw you coming or have some other means that they knew you were coming, and here they are, going about you. Of course, real world, there was no monsters. I get to the top, and this is what I'm seeing. So there's a few things that struck me when I got up here. First of all, you can see pretty far, and there's another picture coming up that will show you even more of a long vision. But you figure, down here in this kind of basin area of where the volcano had erupted and blown this hole in the side, or eroded away to this point. That's probably only 300-400 feet. Like if you're, firing a longbow or something. These are some things you can think about, is the terrain elevation difference. But to get from here at the bottom to where I am, I had to go all the way around and up a long way, because this is a pretty steep hill here, and unless you're going to try to actively try to climb it while people are firing at you with longbows, this could be a very defensible position. This could be a place where you have a fight set up, or you have like a battle designed to take place, and an army gets there a little bit before everyone else. They could set up on this cliff, and they would set up on this sort of a cliff face, because if they came up the other side, then you could have soldiers defending that, and then they're coming up, their archers turn around and shoot that way. If they come through this basin area, they're kind of pinned between this water and the hill, and in order to get to the people on top of the hill, they'd almost have to go through and up and around, or they'd have to, go a long way, or some other means to wait them out, or to avoid them altogether. So, nice little spot there. The other thing I forgot I was going to mention is when I was down here in this little clear dirt area, this is where that first picture was taken, right here, this dirt area. And I'm taking this other picture from the top of this hill looking down, kind of like this way. But now, I didn't see any of this. There are, and it may be hard to see, let's see if I can magnify this actually, yeah. There are these rock formations that people had designed, these kind of like weaving patterns. There's someone who wrote happy birthday to somebody over here. But they're all things that from that point, from this dirt point, I couldn't see it. It's literally like 30 feet away from me. I had no idea because these bushes here are blocking that. So that's something else I was thinking. What inspiration can I take from that? What could I put right in front of my players' noses? And even if they did walk down here, maybe they wouldn't notice that this was a pattern. That maybe this could be the clue to get into the dungeon that they need to get into. But because they're here and maybe the door is down here, they can't see the actual shapes. But if they go up on the hill, they can see the proper shape pattern that then could be the answer to the puzzle. How do I get into this dungeon? How do I go from here? This lake here, it's like a kind of dammed up lake area. What does that provide there? Why is it dammed up there? For the people, it could be that there are farming villages. Maybe instead of this open kind of deserty terrain that I live in, maybe these are farms and this lake was dammed up in order to provide water for the farms. That sort of an idea of it. Fishing, farming, just general water for the local populace, that could all be a reason why they could have formed unnaturally a lake in this area. But the other part was here was the view. I had talked about that before. How far can you see from the ground? Only a little bit. You can only see until the next hill. And in where I live, there's a bunch of little hills. We don't do the huge mountains very much. There's a bunch of little hills. And from there, you can see I'm on top of this volcanic formation here. And I can see out to these mountains, which are, 10, 15, 20 miles away, depending on which part of it. Probably even further than that. So I can see a good ways. If this was fantasy style, forests here and there with some grasslands or whatever, you might be able to see an army coming from far away, and they're not going to notice you. I mean, I'd be a speck on top of this hill where someone way out here 4 miles away is not going to notice me unless they're, very keen-eyed, very set up and ready for that, like a telescope or something to see that. So these are some of the things I'm just thinking about. Here's a closer look of those rock formations I was talking about earlier in the other one. Like I said, you can't see it from this area up here, you'd either have to walk down, and even then you may not be able to catch the full pattern of this, 40-foot long rock kind of pattern that someone built in to that area. This is not the same day, but this is the next day. I went to another area to go for a little walk, and there's this nice little, like, fairly stagnant creek area. So just throwing in more thoughts of what can you see from here? Like, here's this like little waterway. It's not very usable because of where it is and the style of stagnant water that we have in this area. But let's say it was like, you could have this cleaner, it could be flowing. Even if it is like this, what is this area? Look at how dense the foliage is built up on this one side, because it's not very used. Because there's a steep cliff here, could there be a group of monsters laying in wait in there? Could there be a place where you can hide, or bandits hide? I wouldn't, because a lot of these plants here are poison oak, and thus I stayed on the track. But another view, actually in the opposite direction from the bridge I was on, of this kind of stagnant water area. Just a beautiful little thing, and I didn't want to make this too long, but the idea was just that here you have natural elements that you can incorporate into your game. Go out, walk around. Most of us can use it. All of us can use it, no matter what shape you're in. But like, I'm out of shape, so I could definitely use a little bit of a hike from time to time. In fact, after this, I'm going to go on another hike, since I'm not going to be running the magical arts. But get out there and practice your voices, practice your interactions, even if you don't do voices, because I know that scares a lot of people off. And I honestly, and those in chat, both our Golem, who would have been playing today, is in chat, and Casiris, who's joined us before, is in chat right now. And they can definitely testify my voices probably aren't good. My accents aren't good. But they're fun, and they help players kind of get a differentiation of someone else's speaking with a little bit of a different voice, a little bit of a different mannerism. But even if you're not going to get that crazy, just go out there and think in your head, okay, what would they say if they encountered this person? How would they interact with this character, and how would they interact with them? Are they going to react hostilely? Whatever. Would they be hostile to the character right off the bat? Would they decide, okay, here we go, we've got this guy here, he may have information for me. Now, if it is a guy you want to have information in, how would he diffuse a situation? How might he or she approach the party in such a way that they wouldn't necessarily kill on sight? You never know. It's always a possibility. There's the murder hobo parties, and sometimes that's our fault as DMs, because we design things such that everyone is a threat to them. And they get ultra defensive, and they just go, well, we'll kill things and we'll worry about it later. But how would you have something happen so that they don't go out and they don't just kill everything that they see? That they talk with a few of these people. They find social resolutions to possible combat situations or possible other encounters. Then maybe think, okay, if they do kill this person, how do they still get the information that I really wanted the person to tell them? So maybe that is a journal that person has. Maybe it's notes that a person's taking. If they're researching something that the players need to find out about, or you want them to find out about, maybe that's the way they find it. After killing the person, they search the area because they all want to find the treasure. They all want to find the magical items that are, of course, hidden on every creature. What do they find that they would be able to lock onto that would help them further the story that you're trying to tell with the players? And And that's kind of the thing. Like when I was out, I'm thinking I got these two characters that I in particular want them to interact with upon this next leg of their journey. What are their motivations? How would they react? How would the players first perceive them? Is that accurate to how I want them portrayed? Is that like a kind of red herring to how I want them portrayed? Getting out there in nature and just breathing some fresh air and getting some sun and walking around. I didn't bring headphones, and I normally like listen to a podcast or a story or music, but it was an impromptu hike, and I went out and I started walking around, and my brain started turning. And maybe that's something we just all have to do. Find some time to let our brain just have its way with us. Let the brain lead us. Of course, you're guiding a little bit. I'm thinking about the game I was supposed to run today. I'm thinking about, okay, how do I make this more than they're just going into this place? They're going to get this information from this person. What's that place like? What's that person like? What's this other person they might run into like? What's their motivations? Why are they helping? Why are they hindering? All these things start turning in my brain because that's what it was working on to start with. And I had nothing else to distract me from that. And just the inspiration of the world. So, thank you all for joining me. This is a short little thoughts that I have when I'm out and about. How to take real world times, how to use those mundane activities of just walking around, of doing chores, whatever. Think in terms of your game. Think in terms of, if you're not a DM even, think about how your player would react to these things. What in this world would your player say, your character in your world, how would they go, okay, here's a mountain. What benefit can I have of having that mountain? Here's this creek. What would my character think about the creek? Now, it could be simple, like, oh, they're a warforged, they don't like the water, whatever. Or they could be something more like, oh, they're a ranger, and they're going to look for fish that they can eat. They're going to look for disturbances on the mud on either side of this creek, or of the leaves on either side of the creek. They're going to see if someone passed through here. They can utilize the foliage in this picture here. They can look at that foliage and they can say, okay, I'm going to hide in those trees and wait for this monster, or wait for these people that are pursuing us. So that's something else. Even if you're not a DM, you can take inspiration from everyday life. And even those of us who are DMs, a lot of times we're also players. So think on both fronts. How do I use this in my game? How do I use this in a game I am playing in? Take those inspirations and use it. If you guys have any thoughts or ways that you think you draw the best inspiration from, what is maybe an exercise you do, whether it's a physical exercise or a mental exercise that may get your brain turning, I'd love to hear about them. Comment there on YouTube, jump on our Facebook page, and maybe tell us what you have there. And if you have pictures on Facebook, would be great to see. Like, if there's a place you go to hike to gain inspiration, what's that place? What's special about it? What did you draw from your last trip there? Thank you, everyone, for joining me, and let's all level up together. We are all the XP Guild. Thank you so much.